What's up, Ray?
Hello, Steven.
Hey, awesome. Well, so we just got done recording with Shara Rosenbalm. Really, I think it's a really awesome episode.
Last episode, we talked about how to get going, like the school matter, how you can kind of make things happen. And she was an awesome transaction. She was an awesome transition from that episode because she made a career change. She had to literally do these things. She actually did a lot of the stuff that we were talking about doing, which is like having a little bit of hustle and drive. And so it's like, this is like not us
taking advantage of those
bullshitting
opportunities.
Yeah, it's not us like bullshitting and saying like, oh, that was a really cool thing. Like this, not everybody could do what we did. She did. She did it herself. And she she shares lots of cool little nuggets of like how she went to a conference.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of a how-to.
Totally.
I think there's a lot you can take away. So
it's a good episode. This was my first time meeting her. Steve and her had kind of known each other for a while. I think you guys are really going to like it. And it's like a good little episode too. Check it out.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Check it out. Let us know what you think.
Bye.
Awesome. Hey, Shara, how are you?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Doing pretty good.
I'm tired. Yeah. I don't know why. I'm exhausted today. I've had 3 cups of coffee and I still want to take a nap right now.
It's Thursday.
Well,
yeah,
that's right. It is Thursday. And it's Thursday. Like there's like this break coming up. Like next week is next week the week of Christmas, or is it the week after that?
It is next week.
That's crazy town.
Very much.
Well, I'm not too tired right now, but I must have been excited about this podcast because I couldn't sleep. So
your hair is showing it. Your hair looks amazing.
Thanks. I did it
always
for the show. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Ray and Cher, I know you guys haven't met yet. So, Ray and I were chatting and he was like, great, this will be like this great opportunity for me to kind of get to meet Cher and kind of ask questions from the viewpoint of somebody who like doesn't actually know her all that well. Of course I told him a little bit about you, but anyway, yeah. So thanks again for joining us. We're super excited to have you on the show. And I'm specifically, excited because you are hustling right now. You've got so much stuff going on. You're not too far into kind of a career change, which we should definitely talk about, or a little bit, like, we'll get into it. But what I thought was so interesting, about you is that you've got so many things, that you've been focused on. You're kind of hustling. You and I even chat pretty frequent, on a regular cadence. And we've got to even talk about like some of the like even overcommitting stuff because you're so excited and passionate about everything. So I thought for a lot of listeners, especially, not even younger listeners, I think a lot of people run into those same things. A lot of creative people. I know Ray and I have had those same problems where you just take on a lot and then you have to kind of figure out how to move forward. But so why don't we just kind of dive in? So let's talk a little bit about, so you and I met, probably 2-ish years ago.
Almost.
Yeah. Okay. So nobody can keep track anymore, but it was at an AIGA, like rapid mentorship sort of, thing. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but basically we all had an opportunity. Mentees and mentors had like, I think 15 minutes together or something like that. Yeah. And that was like at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was kind of like, everybody on Zoom. It was an interesting time.
For sure. That event, I feel like single-handedly changed everything for me. So it was pretty awesome.
How so?
That is awesome.
I'm curious. I wasn't there. So how did it change? I wasn't there at all. I don't even know what the event was. So like, I'm curious.
So it was this mentor matchmaking event. I just so happened to come across something on LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to sign up for this because in all of my years, I've been a designer for coming up on 14 years or somewhere in that neighborhood. And so I'd never had a mentor at all in any capacity. I wouldn't even say I've had a sponsor before. And so to be able to sign up for this event and have my fingers crossed that everyone I picked that would be available and would be an option for me to kind of talk to was really exciting. And so I get to hit this event, and I was able to talk to design manager at 7-Eleven. I was able to talk to a lead UX designer at Amazon. And then the very last person I spoke to was Steve, who also you happened to be in my group where we did our like little warm up. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, he's so cool and chill. And I did not connect the dots until we landed in that Zoom room together. But it was just really nice to like 3 times over meet someone who matched my energy, who understood kind of like where I was coming from, and not, whoa, slow your horses. Like, but you really you encouraged it in a healthy way. Like, okay, you're after this. And it led me to be just super organized and just really stay on the right path and make sure that I was trending towards my goals. So it was a really great time for me, because that's really the first mentor experience I'd had. And then out of all 3 mentors whom I all matched with, like, Steve, you're still a constant presence. So it's yes. So
Awesome.
Yes, this mentorship goes such a long way. It really does.
Yeah. Well, you stood out because you did have, you talk to a lot of different people, and you can kind of gauge their, you kind of just the energy sort of rubs off, and you were like definitely sort of in this like, all right, I've got goals. And just the fact that I was just kind of impressed by, kind of everyone that took part in this. Ray and I talked a little bit last week about being proactive, and, I think it's just really cool, first of all, just to say like, okay, I'm going to take time out of my day to be a part of this. I mean, it takes effort, it takes time, and you're going to talk to people that, I don't know, maybe intimidating to talk to, but you did it. And anyway, then, so you and I kept in touch. And I kind of continued, I think, to talk about your portfolio and some of the things that you're going to try to do. And eventually I was like, hey, why don't you just come on board with us and, join the team? And so that worked out. And which is great. Well, for me, it's been great to be able to see you more closely start to like have these goals that you're just knocking out. And so
I'm
started
gonna
working.
I'm gonna cut you off because I have questions, because
Let's do it.
I'm learning all of you guys, right? So I think it ties into last week too, because we were talking about, it's like formal education versus not needing formal education, and like the relationships that you make from a school or from the places you work and all that kind of stuff. And so I think this ties in perfectly of like conferences and things like that actually can have value, right? So like to become like, it could be like your next job or like your next partner, your next co-founder, or your next whatever, like there's something to that. But what I'm curious of is the time in between. Because it's like the only thing I knew about you is you had made a career change slightly, right? Like you were doing more graphic design and kind of moved more into product and things like that, right? Which is a big step. Mm-hmm. People don't think it is, but it's a huge step. And I'm curious what you did, because you kind of give me that hustler vibe, like we were selling candy bars like in high school, like out of our backpack kind of thing, So
right.
I'm curious what you did after the conference, after you had made connections with people and met with Steve, that like created that connection between you guys that eventually then turned into a job. Because I think that's like the piece that I think is missing for a lot, especially like we've been trying to hire a lot of young talent, and like there isn't this proactiveness. It's like, well, I signed up on your website. Why there's nothing more for me to do now? It's in your report, which, So I'm just curious what happened after.
That makes me cringe. I'm recognizing I'm very action driven. And so to your point earlier about, when you go to these events and you just never know what those interactions may lead to, I've been able to get some of the most amazing opportunities because I showed up at these events, and I made myself behave in a way where I could be a little bit vulnerable. This is uncomfortable. Like, people don't know me, but again, it's led to some straight up life changing events. And so in between, you can't just let those things fall by the wayside. You can, but if you are expecting to achieve achieve a certain level of, maybe achieve is not the word I want to use, but I think if you have a mission or something that you'd like to kind of overcome, it's worth it to keep in mind, like, I need to maybe reframe a little bit from old behaviors and do things a bit differently. So networking made me super uncomfortable. And even way before I met you, Steve, I had decided to just operate differently. So where I would totally go and be a creeper on LinkedIn, see what's happening, maybe like a couple things and get off, but not post or share. I was reaching out to people cold. Hey, you went to this program. I'm enrolled in the program. Just giving myself the space to keep those lines of communicate, open up lines of communications or initiate that opening line of communication. And then after these events, as I got more comfortable doing this, keep that up. If I see that there could be value in this relationship on both parts, not just you giving me something, but maybe there's something in the future that I could offer you, I need to, cultivate that rapport in that relationship, because I think some of the people that I was proactively doing this with on LinkedIn, that we genuinely check in with each other. We get on calls and we catch up. Like, how are things in your world? I got this going on at work. I got that going on at home. And it's just really nice to kind of broaden your support network in that regard. And then to your point, it could lead to the most amazing opportunities. And it may not be right away, but it could be somewhere down the road. But just that having that authentic interaction is something that you can't buy, or you can't just,
Yeah.
here it is.
The other crazy piece to that too is that people don't realize is it's almost like that's part of the test. It's like we're designers. Like, you get probably, like, when you do an interview, there's like a design test, and everyone just assumes that you're just looking at the work. It's not. It's how you communicate. It's like it's the things that you did. It's almost like the pre-test, right? It's like, what did you do to get yourself here, right? Because one of my designers was telling me her friend or her boyfriend, I think, is trying to apply for things, and he was trying to apply for a job, and like the website doesn't even have like a place to put your portfolio or to show any work or whatever. It's just like your name and your email. And I'm like, yeah, because that's just going to recruiting or it's going to HR. That the fact that you would like stalk people on LinkedIn and find out who the creative director is, or find out who that is, and reach out to them. Now that person who's actually making that decision knows who you are. So they're walking to that recruiter and going, hey, this person's at the top of the list. I don't care who you've been going through. Get me in contact with this person. You know what I mean? Like, it's how you set yourself apart, but people don't realize it. They're just like, it'll work itself out. And then it doesn't. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point. Like, there's having a portfolio, and maybe it's even a good portfolio. And then there's being able to, there's a few parts of it. There's being able to speak well, which is, I think, a part that so many people struggle with. Cher, I think, is not a huge problem on her part, but it's not uncommon. I think, at a lot of designers, and maybe I think even more engineers, just communication is difficult. But then there's the, again, I'm like overusing this like word proactive, but, Cher kind of doing, those things, and then taking, like, which we should get into all the speaking opportunities that she's taken. But there's been, other folks that have like hit me up on LinkedIn. Cher and I have a mutual friend and a coworker of Cher's named Sanjay, that he was like the biggest stalker. And I kind of like, at first I like brushed him off, because, you get a lot of these that are just like, hey, like, I'm interested. And, I've kind of directed him to someone else, and he was like very persistent. And then, you make those opportunities for yourself with like the level of persistence. Cause what that shows to like, at least someone like me, is that like, okay, this person, they've got a lot of drive. It's like, cause we're going to run into those things in our daily lives or in our careers where it's not just going to always go, things aren't always going to go as planned. But if you like have this idea of what success is and you just keep going for it. And so when you're like building a team and you have those types of people that are like, yeah, I've got my own goals and they align with the team goals. You're like, great, then just do the things that are going to be good for you and they're going to be good for everybody.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense.
Well, so what are some of the types of things? I don't remember. Did you go to a boot camp or anything when you were making a transition? Okay.
I did. Out of all the programs, and I got kind of neurotic about it, but I had time because I was on maternity leave. And so I'm like, all right, we're doing this. So I'd already kind of been eyeing programs. But I ended up choosing SMU because I thought it was going to be best for me. I know what I need. I need accountability. I also have 3 kids at home. And at that time I had a brand new baby. So I'm like, yeah, being not here
Wow.
is probably the best thing for me. And so I was like, I want to go so I can be in person. And then pandemic happened like halfway through. But I mean, it ended up working out, and it was, I would do it 100 times over again. It was an excellent experience for sure.
How long was that course?
The program was about 4 months, which it's now a bit longer because it's still remote primarily, from what I understand. And so it was 4 months, but it was an intense 4 months, if I do say so myself.
So what types of things were, I don't know, do you even remember like what the sort of agenda over the course of the 4 months looked like? Was it like starting with the basics and then like, I don't know, what all did you learn in there?
So it really kind of starts off with some strategy practices, and it moves into research strategy and then research. And then we transitioned into the visual design, and then the very last course or portion of the program is all around user testing, which I wasn't expecting to love, but I totally geeked through that whole period. Even research too. I was kind of like, I have that visual design background, so obviously I know I'm going to love the meat in the middle, but I was like, I love this end to end. It's actually a really fun learning experience.
And it completes it, right? Because you don't know if you did anything right until some random user kicks you in the teeth and was like, this is garbage. Who did this? Right in your face. Like, especially if you're in the glass ones and they're just like right there in front of you going, I don't know who did this, but they're horrible. They should be fired. You're like, oh yeah, that was me. That was me. I guess I'll fix that. All right. But you know what I mean? Like, that's how you know you're a product designer, when it's like, if not, you're a visual designer. You make pretty things and they go out there and you forget about it and you move on to the next thing. A product person is literally like, did I make this person who's using this thing happy? Like, did they give me some money? Like, did everything work out the way it was supposed to? Did they click the button? And it's like, that's the piece that is the simplest thing to say. But I think it's like the hardest thing for someone that's like starting to become UX product person to like grasp, it's like, it's sad a little bit because it loses its art form a little bit. Like, it's less about the art and it's more about the action, and then it's
like a different art, right?
Yeah.
It's like, they say like, it's like the art of persuasion or whatever.
Sure. But now it's an emotional art then at that point. It's less of I'll say art's the wrong word then. It's less about making something beautiful. It's making something usable. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, it's like that. So anyway.
Well, so was there go ahead.
No, I'm rambling.
I was going to say that's exactly why I made the switch, because I was really tired of people in my cube telling me, oh yeah, make that blue because I hate green. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, Jesus.
You're such an expert. Well, we need the contrast because we have all of these things that we need to clearly communicate. But no, you're sitting in my cube and dictating design to me over my shoulder. It's like, I'm not about that life. So
that sounds super
I'm
fun.
curious, what were you doing before? Like, you made the transition. Obviously it was graphic. Like, what were you making?
So I was making like pitches and proposal decks. I was able to be a part of a large dashboard initiative. So that was really fun. Like, I was obsessed, and I'm like, I need to figure out how I can make UX a part of my current role, or I need to, throw up the deuces and figure something out. So I was kind of doing a lot of print media, or digital multi-page documents, things like that, and some custom branding and things like that, but not a whole lot of custom branding. We had a completely different designer that did that. But I've done commercial real estate, I've done, beauty and MLM, I've done public school systems. I've kind of just hit a lot of different buckets.
And was that your thing, like growing up? Like, were you like the artsy kid, or it was like, fuck that, I just need to make some money. Like, I'm gonna get into this thing.
Well, I actually discovered that I liked graphic design, and I actually was kind of a natural at layout, and had just a gut instinct for aesthetics in high school. So I signed up for this advertising design class. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I was like, I can either graduate early, but I need these couple of credits. I'm just going to do this course. And I ended up staying longer in high school, an extra, I think, whole semester, just so I could take all 3 levels of advertising design. I'm actually still in touch with that teacher now. But when I found it, I had no idea what I was going to major in. I was like, it's, here we are down to the wire. It's senior year or junior year. I need to start thinking about, like, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to earn a living? I was like, I guess I'll be a business major, even though that sounds not fun at all. No shade to people who love business things.
Yeah, everybody has their own passions, right?
Yeah.
And that's really cool. You and Ray both doing stuff in high school. Like, the extent of my, the closest I came to high school to doing something that even remotely connects to, like, my current life was just art. My art class.
That's what I was going to say. Her high school sounds so much cooler than mine. Like, I didn't have any, like, advertising or anything. It was just like draw clouds, learn contrast, like look at yourself in the mirror and draw your own portrait. Like, it wasn't like learning about the history of advertising and what you could do. And anyway, like, now I'm jealous.
Well, so, kind of making that transition and then going into, moving into doing like research and in the beginning, and then getting like user feedback. How did that, like, how did you feel initially, and have you developed any in terms of like getting that kind of feedback? Like Ray said, like sometimes you'll be like so proud of something, and then an actual user just comes in and just like shits all over it. And it's like not necessarily like an opinion, right? It's like not like the person who's like, I prefer blue. This is an actual user that's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, was there an adjustment in terms of like I think a lot of people kind of like, it's hard not to like love the thing that you did, especially if you really truly think like makes a ton of sense. And then you get that feedback that kind of says like, nobody understands what you're doing.
Totally. There was some reframing initially, and I had to remind myself as to my why, like why I made this transition in the first place. And so I very quickly learned, like, I'm not married to the thing that I've, bled and sweat and probably cried over a few times. Not married to the thing. What I'm married to is the idea that I'm improving someone's experience, and potentially, depending on the product or, thing that we're working on, improving their lives. So that to me trumps any feelings I can have. If I want to fall in love with something I made, I can go, do paint by numbers or something at home, do finger painting with my kids, or build some Play-Doh sculptures. There's a whole other avenue or place for that.
Yeah, right on. Well, so hey, let's talk a little bit about like, so since we met, like, yeah, we get to meet, and I see you're kind of at this beginning of a transition. Then all of a sudden, like, you're like sending me emails saying, hey, I need like a day off because I'm speaking at this conference. Oh, hey, I'm speaking at another conference or whatever. I got to see you. I haven't gotten to see all of those. I would love to, but I was able to see your conference, your talks for this local Dallas conference called Big Design. And the last one you did was so cool. You got someone to film it. You basically made a production out of it, which like I haven't seen anybody. Maybe I don't, I don't watch all of them obviously, but I hadn't seen anybody else at Big D do that. So what was that path? How did you start to get into that? Did you talk to the right person and you started getting people that were just interested? I mean, what'd that look like?
So back to the earlier point that you made, Ray, about the relationships and things of that nature. This opportunity came about because the head of the program, the UX program at SMU, is actually the person that runs Big Design. And so
is it Brian?
Yes. It's Brian Sullivan.
I didn't know that.
So he's
Okay.
pretty awesome. And he reached out to our entire team and said, the the project and case study that you all ended with was phenomenal. I have a surprise day of additional speaking slots, and we haven't announced it yet, but I would like to extend this invitation to you and your team to maybe review your case study. And so, thinking all the way back to the paradigm shift that I committed to making, I said, okay, I'm a dumbass if I say no. So I have to say yes to this opportunity, despite the fact that it terrifies me and I have no idea what kind of value I'm going to bring to people. I don't know if I want to talk about my case study, but what ended up happening is that two out of the four of us in our group, we ended up just coming up with a completely new topic and talking about imposter syndrome, because as we were trying to brainstorm ideas, we're like, I don't know if we want to show our case study. Like, yes, we love it. We bled over it and we're really proud of it. But at the same time, like, is there something else we can talk to about you? And so it led to a talk about imposter syndrome and how to navigate that, especially as a transitioner, and even beyond being a transitioner. I think just people experience it at different facets of life and new chapters and things like that. So, and it was so well received and we were just super shocked, but it was terrifying. I think the thing that helped was that it wasn't live. We didn't have to get on a stage. We were, thank you, COVID.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was virtual. So we were able to pre-record and we had some control over how it was all delivered. And so coming back around, I applied the second time around, this time around, and it was accepted, which I said, hey, I know I have these relationships. I don't have any expectations, but I'm just going to try it and I'm just going to see what happens. And it worked out.
Well,
so,
I remember you and I had a conversation where because you've got so many things that you're interested in and so much going on, there was a brief moment which you kind of considered maybe not continuing to do talks, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember that conversation because to me, I was like, a lot of people are asking you, like, if that goes away, that could be hard to get back. And then the next thing I know, you're like, boom, 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 conferences.
Yeah.
So what'd you have to go through there?
I think I had to process internally the reason why I was considering maybe doing less talks. And so I think just the first talk was about imposter syndrome, and I think that theme continued. It's like, do I have anything of value to offer? Like, I feel like such a poser. Just, oh my God, I just dated myself when I said poser. But I just kind of felt like, I don't know if this is the avenue I want to do. Maybe writing is more my conduit. I love writing. I've always have. I've been super private about it just because, again, another area of feeling like an imposter
syndrome
is writing as well. And I'm like, there's so many other amazing writers. Like, who cares about what I've got to write? Or am I writing about the right things? Is this even valuable to people? So that was kind of like the first initial thing, like getting over that hump. And then since then, just sort of trying to lean into it and just knowing that had maybe I've been exposed to someone who's speaking to some of the things that I like to speak to, that maybe I would have found my way out of my career rut a lot sooner. Or I have no idea how it's helping other people, but just the feedback that I get afterwards, I'm like, I feel like I do need to continue this. And maybe I don't have to do a talk every month or pitch every single conference, just, going after the things that make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense. I think you're right. Like, it's based on, more on feedback, because I think we're all kind of our own worst critic. And I've had some similar thoughts. I've done a few talks in the past, and what in my head initially was like, I need to have some amazing thing that, that all of my peers, that's going to blow all my peers' minds or whatever, which is like impossible, right? But if you kind of reframe it and say like, well, there's a lot of people that are beginning their career or part of the way through their career, or maybe have like similarities to things that I've gone through. And if I just tell something that I feel like is like meaningful, it's kind of like cliche or generic, but if like just a few people are like, oh yeah, like that resonates, then that's like sort of like something to build on, because, I don't know. I know for myself, it's like you get in front of people and you want to like present yourself the best you can. And so, but, reframing it so that, and understanding that there's people that are at different points in their lives, makes it, I don't know, I feel like a lot easier. And then when you do get like good feedback, you're like, okay, cool. Like I'm at least headed down some path where it resonates with somebody.
I took a totally
Exactly.
different approach with talking because I hate it. I'm a extroverted invert, right? Like introvert. Like I hate doing talks, but once I get talking, I don't shut up a lot of times. So what I did, I gave a talk at the launch thing, and there was like 1,000 people there, and like I was nervous as shit. And like we're all parents, and so all I did was
I was nervous for you.
I put the first slide. It was like a funny picture of my son, and all I did before I got on stage was like, if my kids watch this when they get older, I need to do something that'll make them proud. Fuck everybody else here. I don't even care.
Yeah.
Like I hope they get something from this because obviously I took time to write this content and to like put this thing together, and I think it's got some value. But I'm not going to worry about everybody in the audience right now. I'm going to worry about 15 years from now when my son's like, you know, like 17 years old and he sees this random video on YouTube and he's like, damn, that was a good talk, Dad. You know, like you know, you don't suck, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I have 3 girls. So, and I'm like, you're female, you're Black. And so you've got a lot of cards, you know, stacked against you. And so I just want them to know, regardless of where I am in my journey, I was able to do things that I only ever secretly really wanted or hoped or wished for. And now there's this visual of, you know, yeah, I can do anything. And there's at least 2 of my kids by default are just automatically think they can do everything anyway. But I definitely want to convey that to them. So I think also that was also a really helpful part of kind of motivating me to keep going. And also kind of became a bit of the dialogue or a bit of the content that I kind of speak to now.
There were 2 major things that stood out to me of what you said earlier, just kind of circling back to it. And one of the big ones is like, you said, you know, it's like somebody gave you a shot, like they gave you a chance, right? And I think that most people get into their own like head and they say no. And the people that say yes, and I think everyone should, like you might only get that one opportunity, right? And it might literally change everything. It's like, fuck it, just say yes. You might suck, just do it. Let's see. And then the bigger piece to that is like, once you decided to do it, you kind of were trying to like figure out what content to write about. And like, you kind of felt like a poser. So you wrote about being a poser, and like, that was the content. It was like, your content was truth. And I think that's the other piece that like what Steve was talking about. It's like, oh, I got to show off to everybody here and everybody knows me. So I better do something amazing. I got to do better than that person did. Or it's like, if you just tell your truth and be yourself, like that ends up always being the thing. Cause it's like, we're all friends and I'm friends with you because of like your personality and the things that you say and your perspective. So you like made it your perspective and made it honest. And I think that's a big thing where the honesty gets lost sometimes in presentations, and it's just like a filler thing to fill 45 minutes and to talk about whatever's trendy versus like, let's fucking talk about something real quick. This is what's on my mind, you know?
Right. And you're hitting on a lot of things too that have gone through my mind, especially in the second half of this year. And so because I showed up to that first conference, I met the author of a book that I literally put in my cart the day before. His name is David Dylan Thomas, and he wrote the book Designed for Cognitive Bias. One of my favorite books I read all last year, but I tuned into A Book Apart, and I can't tell you how much money I've spent with A Book Apart, but I love those books because they're just so easily digestible. I have kids.
Oh, they're great.
I can knock those things out in a heartbeat. And because I met him at like a pre-conference event, it landed me to connect with him on LinkedIn. And then I was able to circle back with him. And so I wanted to ask him like what the writing process was like for him, because I had an idea. And so having the bravery to reach out and say, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time? I would just want to hear about your process, and not, hey, I want you to do something for me. Just necessarily, I just want you to share, what you're comfortable sharing about what that was like for you. It led to a meeting and an introduction that led to a book deal. So I'm writing my own book with The Book Apart. And so now all those things that you just talked about just feeling like I need to show up and this has to be amazing. I have to blow this out of the water. It has to be like something that no one else has heard or read before. Like all of those things literally happening right now as I am nearing the end of the writing process. It is the most insane thing that I think has probably ever happened.
What
it was insane when you told me you got that opportunity. And in addition to that, like you were telling me some of the people that you were having conversations with, like, like Greg Story and some other people that like I've known from kind of a long time ago, like not really all that well, but we're acquaintances. And just to hear you saying like, oh yeah, I'm talking with this person. I'm like, hang on, how did you meet this person? And, and then the fact that you like have this like, opportunity that's just like really awesome. Yeah, that kind of blew my mind. I was going to like use the Ray. Were you going to ask something specific?
I was just curious about the book. Like, can you talk about it yet? Or like, is this like, oh, it's all like down like a
yeah,
secret?
I wasn't sure either, actually.
No, I can.
Because I like
totally.
just from like talking to you for 30 minutes, I'm interested in the story that you would want to tell. So I'm curious what you're writing about.
Purchasing right now.
Yeah, that's what I was doing on Amazon.
I love that. So I was working on some feature work last year, and I was thinking through just kind of the constraints that were put, on the thing that I was designing. And I was like, man, I said, I don't know how this train of thought evolved, but I just began to kind of think about the constraints that we put on ourselves in our career. Like, oh, you can't do this. You're not that, this is your wheelhouse over here. You're just a designer. You're just this, all of those things, but we put constraints on ourselves, but we have others that, society that puts constraints on us as well. So it kind of led to a talk. And so I did a Ladies at UX talk earlier this year to just kind of test it out and see if maybe I wanted to leverage it for another conference that I knew was coming up in that happened August of this year. And so between the talks and meeting David and having that conversation about the book, it morphed into a bit of the foundation for the book. So the book is really less about, hey, we don't have a lot of representation from diverse people. There are not a lot of, Black people or brown people in design, same with engineering, women as well. And so it's just kind of like, y'all have been tracking these metrics for, I believe, over a decade. And here we are, we're not seeing a lot of change or progress. And then you have like the situations that recently or happened at Google. I believe that was last year. Some interesting things that have happened with some people of color who had very profound voices. And anyway, all that to say, I really wanted this book to speak to people who are underrepresented in this space. And instead of focusing on, okay, what does the industry need to change, or what does this design discipline need to try to be doing? What can we do to maximize our experiences? So kind of looking at work like a social system. So if it's a series of nested circles that kind of get a little bit larger and larger, then the core of it is you. And so how can I maximize my experience where I don't see a lot of people that look like me in leadership. I don't see a lot of people maybe sitting next to me here. I feel like we've got a great sense of diversity within Dialexa. So that's been nice. I think this is probably one of the most diverse places I've ever worked, but neither here nor there. But it just kind of starts at, okay, from beginning to end, how can I best leverage what I can control for, reaching my goals and accomplishing some of those milestones that I've been looking at or really want for myself. And then even kind of taking a step further, be it upward or downward. If you're in middle management, how can I best leverage, what I have the power or control over to better support the people around me? So, how am I managing upward or downward? And then even beyond that, how can I behave at a team level where I'm better supporting the users that will ultimately have my products in hand? So diverse teams build the best products. So everybody's supposed to know that. It's also better for the bottom line too. Whatever, we should know that. But things that are built by homogenous teams are not ideal because you're excluding a huge set of experiences and perspectives from that output. But if the team is unhealthy or has unhealthy dynamics, you know, what are some things that we might implement in order to better build products, and create a safe environment where we can really ideate and just get into things in a safe way where, I mean, we're optimizing design and optimizing how we work together. So it's kind of the premise of the book, and it has evolved quite a bit since its original inception, but it's
That's
happening.
awesome.
I love it.
That's
It's
awesome.
honestly, we've talked just briefly about it. I think probably early on. It almost sounds like it's like even a bit of like a playbook. You know, it's like, hey, if this is the situation you're in, here's some ways you can approach these different scenarios.
Yes.
Which,
Yes.
I mean, man, I would love that.
Which-
Like, that's one of the things I think, just even as a, you know, anything that I'm doing that's new, like Ray and I were starting this podcast, it's like, I mean, totally different, but it's like, if you had some guiding sort of, you know, principles and just ways you could approach it, you know, in your career, like it sounds really awesome.
No, we share a brain because, well, I was going to say the same thing, and I'm hoping that you have like a chapter in it, just because I can't help but have ideas when people are talking. But I think that like, it sounded like you were describing it from the bottom up. I think there's something too from the top down that I think is missing that would totally help, because I think that there is a bunch of executives and a bunch of hiring managers and a bunch of people that wish they had a more diverse team. But sometimes
Right.
you're not even in that situation. Like even like where I work, like, you know, it's like we were a bunch of dudes and we knew that and we didn't want that. We wanted to hire women. And when we'd get women that would apply, it would just be like 90-10. Right. And then we'd interview the women. They'd be like, awesome. I'm so excited. And then they wouldn't accept the job because they didn't feel comfortable because there was already this majority of men and they were like
Sure.
the one woman. Right. And so it's like, then we're like stuck. It's like, no, we're trying. We're small enough that we want to make a change before it gets out of hand.
Right.
But like, what do we do? Like, what's something special that would make it better without like, you know, like overly doing it and trying to be like, no, we're
Yeah.
trying to build a culturally diverse place here, and like sounding so whitewashed,
Yes.
you know, it's like, how do we,
So-
you know, like, I think there's something there. Sorry.
Yeah. And to your point, that was actually my first pitch. That was my first pass at the book. But I also had a lot of like second guessing. I'm like, I just don't feel like I've hit or had certain experiences where I can tell people in a leadership position, this is how you do this. But more so framing it around, you know, what can we do? And so funny you say that. There's someone else who's also authoring their book with a book apart, who's giving that top down perspective. So
Cool.
depending on
So I'm
the
buying
process,
2 books. Okay.
Yes, yes, there are 2 books to buy. And we've actually had a couple of brainstorming sessions where we've been able to just share things back and forth because of the direction that my book has now taken. I had some resources kind of in my back pocket that ended up being helpful for her, and just kind of having that camaraderie around the process. But what happened, we found out kind of early that she was in the writing and drafting stages. And so when I submitted the proposal, it's like, oh, like literally the following week, that draft came across the desk of my editor. And so she's like, let's reframe. Let's think about this. How can we do this? I was like, well, I can speak to this because I'm literally implementing it and practicing it.
Living it.
So living it. Yeah. So it felt a lot more comfortable. And I'm like, this is also something that I feel people like me need for sure.
Awesome. A book
Well,
about
I know you have a really busy schedule, Shara. I wanted to see if maybe we could wrap with some things that are kind of like, tangible sort of takeaways that people can go and maybe implement immediately that you think just might be interesting. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but are there any things that you've kind of incorporated into your life that you feel like have had like a positive impact that you would maybe suggest to me? Like if I'm like, hey,
tell Steve all the things that he sucks at. Let's
that's
go through that.
Actually, that's the secret was that I need some advice. So I just figured I'd get it, on the podcast.
Like a backwards way of doing that. Cool. I think there's a lot of things I could say right now. I think depending on where you are in your journey, I'm currently in this place where I'm fully reassessing everything. You talked a lot about, you mentioned hustler several times, kind of at the very beginning. And so I'm, I'm at this place where I'm like, the hustle is, the ambition and hustle is real in me, but how can I do this and make it sustainable? Also, knowing
Okay.
myself really well, I'm also seeing like I know I'm super critical of myself. So how can I, adjust some levers so that I can be in this for the long haul and not burn myself out, and also not be so hard on myself when things don't go the way that I, am speaking them to go, or, trying to manifest, so to speak. So it's been
Okay. You
interesting.
may have to give like a more concrete sort of like what you're doing, but I'm glad you're going down this path because that was one of the things, like I know we've had conversations about you committing to so many things that you really liked. And I think it started good because you said yes to everything. And there was these opportunities that you may have never had, like speaking, and even, I don't know if you call this a yes, but going out on a limb to, ask the guy for a conversation about the book. But now that you've got a lot of stuff on your plate, and it's a lot of stuff that you actually like want to focus on, um, what I think that's kind of what you're getting at. It's like, I've got this much hustle, but I need to focus it and make sure I'm
Right.
being, that it is sustainable, and that I'm putting my energy in the place that's going to give me the most of what I want.
Yes. So recently the book Essentialism was recommended to me. So it's in the mail right now. So I'm
I'm a
going to be
fan.
reading that. I'm all about kind of reading and nurturing the mind and reflecting on that. So I'm trying to carve out intentional time to do that. And then also, just because I feel that, yes, I do say yes to a lot of things and there is so much I have to say grace over. I'm also trying to, have those quiet moments of mindfulness, and then even taking it a step further. And so now I've got a journal where, each night I kind of reflect on the day. What was I grateful for? It could be that day or just so far in the week. It could be a moment, of empathy shared by a colleague. It could be, something that one of my daughters said. It could be anything. But I try to incorporate that. What am I thankful for, instead of focusing on all the things that maybe didn't go right, or didn't, that I didn't do
Yeah.
or accomplish. And then I'll take it a step further and write out, my intentions for the following day, or at least the week. I'm trying to make that a new habit and speak to, how do I want to feel, tomorrow, or how
Yeah.
do I want to feel this week? I may want to feel confident. I may want to feel productive, even if, I have a warped sense of productivity, which is do everything, all these things, and then have a whole new list of things, uh, at the end of the
Yeah, I
day.
love
So
that. I've actually heard, I've heard a lot of people talk about that type of activity, and I haven't necessarily done that. But what sounds just obviously good about it is you are directing your energy, because it's at any time we can totally be, I think everybody lives these emotional roller coasters just at work and in life, where it's like, there's times where you're bummed out or whatever, or times where you're super excited. And it's just this energy that you have contained. And I feel like if you sort of direct where you want to put that energy, and especially if you have specific goals and initiatives that you're focusing on, you're like intentionally saying like, this is how I want to feel about this, and this is what I want. It sort of, I think, also maybe kind of helps keep you motivated to get certain things done. Because you're like, well, if I don't write at least one page tonight, I'm going to feel like crap about it tomorrow. I'm not going to feel good, or whatever.
right. Yeah, there's a level of grace that you have to extend yourself, and I'm not good at that, but we are working on it.
So
It is a 2022 goal that I
specific
have for myself.
question, just
Yeah.
because I feel like you're not a designer unless you've like designed your own to-do list or some kind of productivity app or something. Like, what are you using to actually document all this stuff and to reprioritize everything?
So I have a few tools. Um, I like Todoist, so that's kind of like my work tool. My coach, who is amazing, and, she puts her foot in my ass when it needs to be there, but she's been on me. She's like, I've been literally saying to you all year, like, you need to do less things, like slow down, and it's okay. And so she forced me to put everything in Trello, and then so having that visual, I was like, oh, I said yes to a lot of things, but I was justifying those things by, oh, well, I'm a part of a whole group of people doing this. It's not just me doing the work. But I notice in hindsight now that if other people get busy and they said, hey, I need to step back from this, or, oh, I committed to this deliverable, but it'll get there, just not right now. I was sliding into that. Like, oh, I got it. Like, oh, I'll make extra time for this.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, oh, I haven't written in 2 months. Don't let my editor do this, but it's fine. So yeah, there are a few.
We'll beep it out
So
like you were
that.
cussing, you know.
Yeah. I'm a fan of Trello. I've used both of those, and I like the visualness of Trello. I guess even like you said, like how much space it starts to take up when you were like putting in more stuff.
Right. Color coding it. I'm like, oh, all these things are related to my book. Oh, all this stuff is work stuff, and only 2 of those cards are, what I absolutely have to do. The rest of these things are elective things that are value adds. They look, it's
Right.
good to be a part of because I'm passionate, I care.
It's not worth the stress and time.
Man,
now I'm losing my feed.
Well, one last
the
thing
stress and time.
I was gonna say about that is like, I think that there's a misconception of the word hustle, and it's like it's so like it's like everyone thought like when Gary Vee said hustle, it meant like you don't sleep, you're like up all night.
Well, that is what Gary Vee means.
Maybe, but that's him. But to me, that's like hustle is getting shit done that is important, that matters, and doing it at a level that is fucking badass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you make things happen. It doesn't mean you make everything happen. Right? It's like that's the big piece that I feel like is missing. It's like, don't die, just get shit done,
Right. And for me, it's a reframing even right now, because it feels completely unnatural to be doing, focused on just maybe a couple of different areas in life. And so, but I also have to remember, I have girls, I have children. They're not going to be small forever.
3 of them.
I have a whole husband who is
a whole
like
one,
the most
not
supportive,
a
whole husband, not a half a husband or a quarter, a whole husband who is amazing and just super gracious about, all the things I say I want to do. He's got my back 100%. But I mean, he's also my best friend. I want to spend time with my best friend. I don't always want to be in bed at night, typing on the computer. I might want to watch, 60 Days In or some crime show, fill in the blank, with my husband. So like, it's important to reframe what hustle looks like and spend time wisely and incorporate those healthier practices around that.
Awesome. Well, Shara, I know you've got a busy day. Thank you so much for making time with us. I'm really looking forward to your book. Of course, any talks that you have coming up, always want to check those out. What's a good way for people to get in touch with you if you're so inclined to let that happen?
Shara Rosenbalm on every platform: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of my jam. And Pinterest.
Of course it is.
I'm in all of those places. So.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, we hope to have you on again, like when your book comes out. And of course, when it does, we'll be tweeting it and promoting it. And I'm super excited for you. And until then, have a great day. And thanks for joining us. I'm still getting used to like how to end the show and all that.
Well, it was awesome. It was great to meet you. I think this is us
Likewise.
meeting each other. So we'll have to hang out or do something since we're all local.
Yeah, for sure. Like I feel like we have lots of mind meld moments here.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I'd totally be down for it. But I appreciate you guys having me. I started to say like, I wonder if I should do this closer to when I think the book is going to come out, since I extended the deadline or requested for an extension. I kind of don't know where it will land in terms of coming out. So
we'll just do it again.
I should have pushed this, but
we'll hype it up whenever it does.
Or even if we do like a little mini episode and be like, hey, remember that thing we talked about on episode 2? That shit's out now. Go fucking buy it,
I love it. Yeah.
Something like that.
This is some scary shit, but I'm excited. So it's going to happen. Cool.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it. Have a good day, Cher.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. All right.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.